All right, thanks. I would ask, since we're not going to have our headphones on for the first part at least, if you can't hear, just give us a little wave and we'll try and catch that. The panel today is, actually I'll just introduce people by name. Ken Timsit, Thomas, Prevot, come on up, and Mounir, I'm getting that right? Okay. Yeah, just grab a seat. Oh, and I almost forgot, we have Julian coming via Zoom. And I guess we actually do have to wear those because we need to hear Julian.
Hi, Julian.
At least I'm going to.
Can you speak so that we can check that we can hear you?
Hello, guys. Yeah.
Okay, great. So,
hello, guys. Can you hear me?
I can. And actually, I guess, sorry, Thomas and Mounir, you probably do need to put the headphones on because we have Julian, so we'll need to hear him. So the topic for the panel today is, the title is, should we build for whales, degens, or noobs in Web3? Another way of putting that is sort of what's the adoption curve that we should be catering to? Because obviously we have very committed users who provide a lot of volume and liquidity, but ultimately, if you want to grow a business, you have to have a wider base, or at least that's one way to grow a business. So that's the discussion topic for today, and we have people from various different parts of the industry, and so we're going to have a broad perspective on that question, I think. Let's go through and just have everybody introduce yourself, give me your name, tell me who you work for, and just very briefly the kind of category that you are serving, DeFi, NFTs, exchanges, that kind of thing. And we'll start with Ken here.
Thanks, David. Hi, everyone. So my name is Ken Timsit. I'm the head of Cronos chain. So Cronos is the first EVM-compatible chain built on the Cosmos SDK. So it's layer 1 Ethereum sidechain. It was launched at the end of last year, in November. And so aside from that particularity, that it is EVM compatible, built on the Cosmos SDK, it's also a chain that distinguishes itself because we have a close strategic and technical partnership with Crypto.com. And so Cronos is positioned as one of the chains that is particularly suitable for Crypto.com customers when they want to start moving away from the world of the custodial exchange into the world of DeFi, NFTs, and Web3 gaming. And of course, it's a big deal because Crypto.com has 50 million users all around the world. And so far that bet of partnering with an exchange to bring the next generation of Web3 users into the Ethereum world has paid off and validated itself. And we can talk about it more today.
Great. Thomas, go for it.
Hey guys, I'm Thomas. I head creative production for Crypto.com on Crypto.com's NFT platform. So we're a fully custodial NFT platform and marketplace. So we see ourselves as kind of a platform for mainstream adoption of NFTs. We work with a lot of various sized and types of contributors or creators. You can see us as almost a YouTube type service where you have your self-serve approach, and any creator can come and mint their NFT collection and connect with their audience. We have a more curated aspect as well, where we'll pick and choose some of the better self-starters, or we'll have creators reach out to us, and we have a BD team that reaches out and just connects with some of the some quality creators out there. And then we also cater to a bigger, larger tier of, let's say, top tier institutional partners, companies and sports entities and teams that we have partnerships with. So we help them, we consult, and help them guide them to best practices and how to make a meaningful connection with NFT collectors out there.
So already two seemingly quite different points of the adoption curve, I would say. Mounir, tell us what you do.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Mounir. I'm founder of ParaSwap. So ParaSwap is a middleware that helps traders, dApps, wallets to exchange tokens in various chains, in 7 chains right now. Most of our users are DeFi natives or what you call B2B, like wallets, dApps, other protocols like Aave that will use ParaSwap not just for exchanging tokens, but for swapping APYs, for repaying with collaterals and all of that. So we consider ourselves as an infrastructure product, although we have made some steps into controlling between code the whole stack from the wallet to the user interface to the API. The idea, in my opinion, or in our opinion as a company, is that we are still very early, so we don't know really where the end users will be 5 years or 10 years from now. So we want to have a full understanding of the whole ecosystem. That's why we are addressing various segments. We are still, our core product is an exchange. That's what we really do. It's like we are like an Expedia for exchanging A to B. But how do we get there? We are building a lot of infrastructure and a lot of toolings that will address the needs of various users. But we see ourselves in the next 5 to 10 years as being a pure infrastructure player.
Yeah, and that's a very interesting twist because the title of the one thing that's not mentioned in the title of the panel is business to business and infrastructure and how that fits in. So I think that's definitely an important point that we'll get to. Julian, the ghost in the machine on the giant screen. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, all right, guys. So first, sorry for not being physically on the panel. Apologize for this. Yeah, so my name is Julian Butulu. I've been in a space for quite some time. I'm the director and CEO of Stake Capital Group. So created a number of different projects in a space. Rect News, which is the on-the-ground investigative firm where we provide exploits analysis and also different type of content such as video of the space. Blackpool, which is one of the biggest hedge fund on the NFT market. We are the best on Sorare, the football fantasy game, for example, and all the number of different verticals. StakeDAO, which is with the liquid lockers, we are involved in lobbying and in the DeFi space. So we provide asset management, asset optimization using all type of different mechanism from DeFi, so from options, derivative, and auto market making of the lending or lending market, and then Stake Capital, which is an investment vehicle, family office. Plus a quant. So we are involved in liquidations, arbitrage, market making. I did the first slash loan in a space. So yeah, we provide a number of different tools in the space of DeFi. And I'm also involved in as a core member of the Curve finance protocol built by Michael.
Great. So again, I think a pretty different profile. So what I want to start with is just having each of you talk for a couple minutes about, I guess I would say maybe your customer profile in general, like who is the person or entity that you're serving, and then maybe we can go back around. But I think the next step from there would be to talk about kind of how you expand on that profile or how you think about expanding on it. So Ken, for Cronos, let's start with you as a layer one, I guess. How do you think about your customer? I mean, it's not a term that we use necessarily a lot in the space, but I think it's useful.
Yeah. So if we think about our mission and the reason why Cronos exists first, if you look at the world, you probably have around 350 million people around the world today who hold some crypto, and the majority of them, basically, they've purchased Bitcoin or Ether on an exchange, and between 30 and 50 million of them are really self-custodial, and they manage the majority of their assets through a self-custodial wallet, and they're able to access DeFi and NFTs directly. So what that means, if you're thinking about like what's the next wave of users who are going to come to Web3 and complement those original 30 to 50 million custodial users, they are exchange customers. So they are people who are already familiar with crypto and are ready to take the next step, managing a user journey that's a bit more complicated to manage when you're interacting directly with protocols. So the reason why Cronos exists and the reason why it's structured in the way that it's structured is that we believe that there's a funnel that is going to come from Web2 users to exchanges and to Web3, and we're trying to facilitate the second part of that transition. So Crypto.com has 50 million users, so relative to the numbers that I just mentioned, that's a sizable user base that we're going to bring to the world of Ethereum, and that serving those users that we think are the next generation, the newbies, the ex-Web2 users, is really the core of our mission. Now, of course, for the ecosystem to be interesting, you can't just put new Web3 users on their own on the protocols. And so, of course, when we're thinking about the users that we need to cater to, we need to cater to everyone. So we need whales. So we have quite a few whales who are providing liquidity to the various DEXs and DeFi protocols on Cronos. We have Degens that come and go depending on the attractiveness of investment opportunities that the individual dApps are providing on Cronos. And we have this large number of users, newer users, who typically invest a few $1,000s and appreciate the fact that on Cronos you can get in and out of DeFi positions by just paying a few cents in transaction fees. And of course, we have the developers who are a very important constituent in our ecosystem. 300 dApp projects right now on Cronos who are making it useful to its users.
Pardon me. Thomas, I'm particularly curious to hear from you because we just went through, I would say, over the last couple of years, maybe the first NFT cycle, super cycle, maybe, and that was obviously a huge entry point for people who didn't even necessarily know that much about crypto going in. So, can you just kind of talk about that aspect of it, and then anything else that maybe I'm not familiar with about what you do?
Yeah, sure. Well, dovetailing nicely into what Ken just mentioned, I mean, Crypto.com's mission is to get cryptocurrency in every wallet. So we're here to help facilitate mainstream adoption. We're here to build tools that is going to make NFT, crypto, and blockchain technology accessible to a more mainstream audience. So that's pretty much how we design and build our products. And when it comes to the audience we try to cater to on our NFT ecosystem or on Crypto.com NFT specifically, we're trying to work with some of the more exciting and best creators out there. They're kind of the mainstay or the backbone of our ecosystem. And the real idea here is to get audiences behind these projects that are going to see utility and value on the longer term, and that we try and make these people feel at home and want to stick there. Everything is about creating an ecosystem between these different projects. With we call this audience the Crow fam. We're all rallying around Cronos and crypto projects, Crypto.com projects. Okay, yeah, sorry about that. And so getting this user base of let's call them newbies or more mainstream audience is quite important. And if to take that whale metaphor almost in a bigger sense, the whales show up when there's food. So, if you see these, maybe it's a bad term, but if you see this mainstream audience as plankton, whales are going to show up, and that's how we get those excited. And the Degens, as you see them, they're more of the predatory fish. They'll come in where the whales are to try and get some of the action. So
yeah, it is kind of an unfortunate metaphor because you have to think about, as Ken put it, the whales are providing the liquidity. The whales, in some sense, are not eating the krill; they're like serving the krill.
Pretty much.
So, but yeah, it is an ecosystem, and that, it's an interesting, important way to think about it. And I also, while you're on point on deck here, can you just really quickly talk about UX? Do you have a role in UX, or do you think about it because you are serving that frontline new adopter, and just have any high level thoughts on that question?
Yeah, absolutely. That's for us is one of the most important aspects of trying to build this sustainable ecosystem is building features that bring users and make them want to stick around.
And sorry to interrupt, but maybe you want to talk about your job specifically, because you're a creative director, you're not an engineer, so you're coming to bring a perspective to the products that is quite specific, and maybe you can talk about that.
Exactly. Okay. So on our end, we are really on the creative, the production, and also the business end, and all of this strategy and these objectives kind of inform our product roadmap. But as I was mentioning, what's really important is making sure the ecosystem is sustainable in the longer term. So any type of feature that can help collectors socialize, connect with creators in a more meaningful fashion, gain a sense of belonging and ownership on the long term. But with these projects that we're trying to bring projects that have a vision, that have something to offer, not just as a drop and try to profit and go, but something that will grow over time and keep people excited.
Yeah. That community aspect is really interesting. Mounir, as we said, you're more. It seems like more on the business to business side. I guess one way to put the question to you is, how do you think about that as a continuum when you're, especially for example, working on relationships, making connections, but still keeping kind of an end user in mind, maybe, or thinking about the ecosystem of the different players and making moves based on that broader view?
Yeah. Also, it depends on which chains you're looking at. If you see the category of users on Ethereum, it's completely different when you're looking at Polygon or BSC or other chains. So it's been always a Degen play. Our target users were whales and Degens that make 90% of the volume, 10% of them make 90% of the volumes. But the moment we launch on Polygon and BSC and Avalanche and other chains, this is where we got a huge category of retail, especially BSC and Polygon. So it's a big challenge to try to please everyone and try to communicate accordingly and do customer support for all of our users. So it's been a challenge, although I would say 90% of our effort due to go to the retail, but the Degens and the whales don't need any kind of customer support. So I would say it's been more challenging for the smallest part, or the longer tail of our users, than really the ones that bring most of the volumes. But then on the B2B side, it's more straightforward. Those are protocols. They have a profile that look a lot like Degens. So when we talk to those what you can call power users, versus when we talk to the B2B like the Aves and StakeDAO and other protocols, it's really the same category of people. So we have the same language, the same interactions. We don't need to explain any foundations. Everything is straightforward. Everything is quite technical. So yeah, I would say the challenge is to get in the long tail, but I believe that this is the future for adoption of crypto, is to trying to get this long tail and trying to build educational systems. Like recently, we launched the whole automation of our support system just to address this long tail of users, even though they don't bring the majority of volume, but you believe that will happen in the future. It's
long
just a matter
term,
of time.
Yeah. Just because you mentioned it, I'm curious, when you say that BSC and Polygon have more retail users, do you feel like that's just a function of fees? And if you're on Ethereum, you have to move a lot of money to justify the fees?
I believe it's part of it, but that's not the only thing, because Polygon and BSC and other chains, when they launched, they try to capture the value propositions that we found in other protocols like yield farming and all those incentives. And obviously, they were able to attract users because they have low fees. But the users didn't come because they are low fees. It's just that it wasn't possible for them before to use those protocols.
So, Julian, I mean, it seems like you have a huge portfolio, but the impression that I formed was that you are mostly on the investment side, it seemed like, maybe, if that's a fair way to say it. So just talk a little bit about who you consider your customer and what their needs are, and then how it feeds into the other categories.
Yeah, well, I mean, the investment side it's probably like 20% of the business. Then we have StakeDAO, Curve Finance, Blackpool, all those different projects. They are retail first audience. So I would say that over the past few years, what we realized in the DeFi space is DeFi is mostly driven I would say more than 90% by whales and Degens, and the retail is very small portions of those volumes and transaction on the market. I would say that retail is obviously at the moment on centralized exchanges, and because it's easier for them to use the technology, and the amount of money that they have to move is compared to the transaction cost makes more sense over there. On DeFi, like decentralized applications such as Curve or Aave or StakeDAO, liquid lockers, for example, if we look at the how much money is sitting on the wallets of those people depositing inside those applications, more than 80% and 80 or 90% they are whales. I mean, I'm talking about in terms of volumes. And the reason for that is because, and I think there was a good point previously, is that in the early days of a project, you need momentum and traction. And I think Degens and whales will provide this momentum and traction. So it's very difficult for DeFi projects to build something without targeting those people first in the early days. But then because those guys they go where the money is, and the space is built in such a way that you have high yield because of high inflation or distribution and early days rewards and the equity rewards tokens, then those guys, they will leave. So it's a very big important. It's important to have in mind that the early days of a project is very important to attract Degens and whales, because they are the ones that will get the momentum and traction in the project. But soon after the project is built and solving a problem, then it's very important to target retail users. And then this is where most of the projects in the space of DeFi have failed, because it's really difficult for normal users to either make transaction where the transaction cost is higher than the utility they get, or to use the application to understand the concept behind the application, because the UX or the UI is really complex. So yeah, in our world, Degen and whales, they are the market, the niche that we're trying to target, because they are the ones that present the most of the volume. But then the more DeFi is evolving, we need to build products to satisfy normal users where they don't necessarily have user capital, and they still want to use this product to swap, to lend, to borrow, to hedge, or to use any kind of derivatives system. So that's the reason why layer 2 solutions will make possible for retail to jump into this space, not from centralized exchanges. So there will be, I guess, a huge migration of capital and user base from centralized exchanges, from centralized application into DeFi, because it will be cheaper, faster, and also more the UX and the UI from those people that are currently building Web2, like Facebook, TikTok, WhatsApp, Twitter. They are now coming on board, building NFT-friendly system. They're building interface that will satisfy users because they understand how to use this application in a friendly way.
Yeah, and just to sort of restate something very important that Julian said, you know, the adoption curve and the fall-off curve for new projects can be very sharp, and if you've been in the space long enough, you've seen it a million times. Something will pop, and then, as Julian said, you might lose the whales as the returns decline. And so probably it sounds like the main question that we're trying to address here is, how do you make that transition? How do you serve the whales and the degens, but then eventually grow what Mounir was calling the long tail? And so I just kind of want to open it up to ideas about that. And you know, I want to make sure that we're not just talking about returns and UX and fees, but also actual end applications. Like, why do people, specifically the mass of people who aren't speculators even necessarily, want to use these systems at all? And so what are some ideas about that? And just whoever wants to jump in, really.
I think obviously, coming back to first principles, the app itself or the protocol should be useful, as you framed it, to the broader audience. It should not be just a Ponzi product that will be serving only a particular use case, that once the rewards or the huge inflation will go away, that product will no longer make any sense. So I think that applies to Web3, but it applies also to Web2. It applies to any product, even in the physical world. So I think, yeah, I mean, it seems a bit weird that we're highlighting those first principles, but I think, yeah, this is how products are built in the first place. So usefulness is really important. But I think also coming back also to DeFi and how it started what you call composability. So I think the more composable products with other protocols, that makes those products very valuable. So even though at the beginning it starts with an incentive game, but those people should be sticking in the product on the long term. We can see that also in the Web2 world, like Uber, when they launch a city, they will put a huge incentive for drivers. They will be like literally paying drivers to drive without any passengers. But once the market is going to equilibrate itself, well, the passengers will always find those drivers, so those incentives will no longer be needed. But if the whole thing is all about incentives, yeah, that's a short-term play.
Yeah, and I mean, I especially would have to point out that, like, the Uber model, I think we've seen a couple of cases recently where that is a problem in crypto, specifically because customers are so mobile, right? Where you can, I mean, there might be incentives to stick around, but you can move your money quite quickly. So that model can lead to those short fall-offs. Or Ken, go for it. You want to talk about getting the retail long tail?
Yeah, So first of all, I think that in a way I know everyone is saying that, right? But we're quite fortunate to be in a bear cycle because it's an opportunity to take stock and try to think about the next generation of applications. And we're seeing that everywhere. I think we're seeing that in DeFi, right? For example, like during the bull market, it was all about creating more liquidity pools, creating more early adopter rewards for people who put money into those liquidity pools, and then replicating that model again over and over and over. What I find very interesting right now is that developers are trying to think about DeFi protocols that are more capital efficient. So practically what that means is if a DeFi protocol is more capital efficient, if you're a liquidity provider, you can put liquidity in it, earn a greater share of the transaction fees for the capital that you've put in it, and rely less on the short-term early adopter rewards that are coming from the protocol token being issued to your profit. And so right now, with GMX,
I don't mean to interrupt, but just as a very basic for everybody in the audience and even for me, when you say capital efficiency, can you just talk a little bit about what you mean by that?
Yeah, so capital efficiency means, in order to enable $100 of trading volume on the exchange, how much liquidity do you need to have put in inventory in that exchange? And so today, if you look at Uniswap V1, for example, the granddaddy of DEX is the amount of capital that you needed to put in liquidity to enable $100 of trading volume was quite large. It got better with V2, with V3. But now you have people like GMX, DYDX, who are building decentralized trading venues that are much more efficient and therefore more sustainable. And I think getting to that point is a way to rely less on the early adopters who may come and go and shift from product to product. So that's in DeFi, and I think that we really need those protocols to appear. Then in NFT and gaming, I think the bear market right now, even though it's making it really tough for games to raise funds, it's an opportunity to think about how we make Web3 gaming sustainable. So the previous model, the Axie model or the Stepan model was you buy an NFT, that NFT enables you to play in a game, and you're playing because you're making money, and you're making money because the next guy who's going to play is going to pay more for that same asset. Of course, this doesn't work when the prices of your assets are moving sideways or going down. And so right now, it's very interesting. We are people who are trying to rethink what Web3 gaming looks like. The idea being that, yes, you can have play to earn, but not everyone can earn. You can't just play and earn. You have to earn for a reason as a reward for doing something special, whether it is because you have an in-game asset that you're reselling to someone, or because you're creating user-generated content, or because you have won a tournament and are kind of participating in small-scale esports, or because you're like one of the early adopters of the game or an active community member, and you get rewarded by that. So in the end, I think that you were saying like why, like, how do we serve the users? I truly think that right now the reality is that whether it's whales, Degens, or new users, they're all coming to blockchain to make money. Right? That's in the end, it's what blockchain is a system to transfer and store value. And it's all about being able to make a profit with that value. But what we are working on, however, is to try and find more sustainable ways for that value to be created.
And sort of implicit in your answer is that gaming is a particularly, at least potentially fruitful way to get some of those new users in, I think.
Yeah, so I think we are of the conviction that among, within the gaming population, and particularly the casual gaming population, there's a propensity to experiment with blockchain and take advantage of the applications that are being created. Of course, it's already a digital savvy population. Oftentimes, you have people who are spending hours in commute and are playing on their mobile phone. So it's a particularly promising user segment to go after. But clearly, it's not the only one. People have to be gamers to start with. We're not going to transform non-gamers into gamers, so we need to go after other segments as well.
Yeah. So Thomas or Julian, if you want to jump in on the sort of retail long tail, getting people in, and then we will have a few minutes after that for questions. So if people have questions, start thinking about those.
I can start really quickly, just drawing a parallel with what Ken was speaking for around DeFi, how you draw a parallel to more the creative aspects of NFT projects. I think there is also kind of a virtuous aspect to the bear market that we're in the sense where it allows for more intentionality from projects. 6 months ago, everybody wanted to drop their NFT collection. We were getting a lot of pressure from huge amounts of creators to get things into market quickly, oftentimes without the right amount of strategy or marketing, just because they'd the feeling that you'd be missing out on an opportunity if you didn't do it right off the bat. Whereas now, it's really about, well, getting even the mints themselves and the drops, instead of going after profit because the market is bullish, it's really going around, they're going for users and adoption. And the mint,
sort of the core value proposition rather than
and
speculation.
with mint prices being much lower, you're getting more people interested that might stick around for a longer amount of time. And because there's more opportunity for those projects to rise in value in the future, and it's also it gives creators a sense that they need to think about their longer term strategy and build something that's more durable than just disposable.
Yeah, absolutely. Julian, do you want to chime in on this topic? Oh, muted.
Yeah, I'm good. I think.
Okay. Well, do we have questions from the audience? Okay. I think we have a roaming microphone out there.
Hi. You mentioned about not turning non-gamers into gamers. And I know that one thing that sort of marketers and developer, application builders look at are sort of other lookalike audiences or communities where there could be like a correlation to what maybe you're building or who you're targeting. Are there any examples from the panel of what those communities might look like or those audiences might look like that maybe you've borrowed from or looked to as by way of an example for how you've then gone and developed something?
Are you saying sort of non-blockchain native applications that you can then sort of parallel with a blockchain?
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in hearing both, to be honest. I mean, you've got, a lot of crypto correlates with a lot of gaming stuff, but I just wondered if there was anything else that you could point to, or whether there's anything within the crypto sort of sphere that maybe you've looked to when you're developing, say, DeFi protocols or something else.
And so I don't know. I think what would be interesting here is I don't know to what extent you've done consumer research and you draw up like user personas when you're building a campaign, you're preparing on a campaign. Maybe that's a good way of answering the question. And similarly for Mounir and Julien, I don't know if you've done any kind of consumer research that you can share with us?
I have a funny story for the start of ParaSwap. Naively, we wanted to build a decentralized Coinbase for everyone. That was in 2019. And we spent 2 months building it. And I went ahead. I was in a startup incubator and pitched the project to everyone. And they were like, yeah, nice. And people tried it. And the first feedback was like, I can't trade Bitcoin. And it's a decentralized app using. Yeah, sorry. The feedback was like, I cannot trade Bitcoin. Where is Bitcoin? Well, I mean, it's based on Ethereum. It's using smart contracts. And I had to explain the whole thing, and I lost them completely. So this is where I thought that, yeah, I mean, we completely missed our target users, and we have to rethink this whole thing back and start over. But now we're, I mean, 3 years later, we're doing some customer research just recently. And we see more and more interest from the retail or people coming from the Web 2.0, thanks to the NFT market mostly, and the gaming markets. But maybe, guys, you have more insight, more in-depth insight about that.
Julien, do you want to start, or should I?
Well, I think it's quite interesting how the space has evolved over the past couple of years. When we first got Care Finance or Rect News or even Blackpool, people thought that we were crazy and they called us project. The UX and the UI was stupid, and people really criticized those platforms because they couldn't understand the either user interface or the user experience. But the reality is, like, back then, what was important to build was the foundations and the pillars. So the niche or the market was completely different. So it was really trying to focus on the technology, building auto market making, lending platform, swapping, DEX aggregator, or technology, such technology. But now, as Mounir mentioned, the space has evolved dramatically over the past 2 or 3 years. So now you have more products and more products that are building simple products like what I call layer 3, where you basically build a product that solves a problem on the retail side without actually the need to mention blockchain or DeFi or crypto. And this implies a lot of Web2 skills, because if you don't actually need to mention that your application is using blockchain or using crypto and you're actually solving a problem, this is a way for you to target a huge user base. And that's the reason why, for example, on the investment side, what we're looking at the moment, we're looking more at people solving problems from the Web 2 or whatever. And then at the end of slide number 12 or 15, they say, okay, we're going to use blockchain because blockchain is solving one of these problems. I mean, it's easier to solve the problem that we're trying to build, the solution that we're trying to build to tackle this problem. So now with the industry, the focus is very on UX and UI. Back then, I don't think like 2 years ago, 4 years ago, you really needed to build application that looks good and was easy to use, because it was not actually targeting those type of people. But now today that Facebook is bringing NFT mechanism, Instagram, Twitter, or other application that billions of people are using on a daily basis. Now it's important to build this application. And if an application is built and solving a problem without mentioning blockchain or crypto, I think it's a big win for people looking to build projects.
Yeah, I think it definitely, like, really smart people thinking about it are definitely of that mindset that once you get to where you're going, you won't even have to talk about blockchain to your audience. Thomas, did you want to chime in, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go very quickly. I think just to respond to the question about like user research and how that is done and segmented, I guess, very, very classic way when we're building a product, defining user personas and doing user research to kind of shape what the platform should look like. But once the platform is up and running and we're really trying to, build usage and adoption, we tend to do a lot of that research more ad hoc through just listening, just analyzing community sentiment. I think that's something that's been quite important, and it's almost unanimous. I mean, what we see when we listen into these communities is they're clamoring for engagement. They're clamoring for just ways to be rewarded and engaged on a constant basis. And they'll go through a lot of hoops if they're presented to them in a way that's a bit gamified and that's rewarding. So that's for me has been kind of where we get the most insights actually.
Interesting. So I think we might be able to squeeze in one more audience question if somebody has one.
Given that this space is evolving so fast and that there's still a lot of experimentation that needs to be done, how do you guys get comfortable with failure?
That's a great question.
I guess we don't have a choice. The whole space, in my perception, is fairly comfortable with failure.
We get to re-experience it every 2 or 3 years.
But I came into this role, head of Cronos, from working at Consensus for many years before. So I was in blockchain, but I wasn't like I am now in a situation where everybody can see every morning all my metrics, how many users, transactions, apps, everything that's happening in the blockchain that I'm leading, and it's quite stressful. But I think that when I look at Twitter comments and the reactions of the community, we're still in an ecosystem where our users are also our supporters, so they're very generous and understanding and patient. I think they are overall patient. Oftentimes, we all have our a small community of more vocal people who share with us constructive criticism when they have strong views in terms of what we should do with the platform or with some applications. But generally speaking, I think the community is hugely supportive, and that's the main thing that is making us comfortable with failure.
But I think that's a very interesting observation because, of course, as we talk about the long tail of retail users, they're less likely to be people who are intimately familiar with the way the industry works and sort of the experimental nature of everything. So I imagine as you move along that adoption curve, you probably have less of that community patience, you might say. But let's hear from everybody else.
I mean, I think failure is part of the process. It's completely accepted, but it's about incremental success. Like, it's about failing a little bit less at each attempt, and hopefully a little bit less than your competitors as well. But I think it's a learning curve for everybody, and as was mentioned in the question, this market is changing so rapidly that if you don't iterate and if you don't try new things and if you don't see if something's going to work or doesn't and quickly pivot if needed, you're not doing it the right way.
Yeah.
If I can
go for it, Julian.
If I can add something, I think there are two different way of two different sides of failures in especially in the space of DeFi and Web 2 or Web 1 or whatever that they didn't have. You have the concept of failure because your product is not the right fit for a market, but you also have the concept of risk, and risk can cost a huge amount of money in a space. For example, like a couple of days ago, we interviewed losing, getting hacked by 190 million. We have a couple of billions US dollars. If you look at the leaderboard on Rect News, I think it's a bit almost like 5 billion US dollars that you can exploit over the past few years. So the risk of the failure in the space is not necessarily just a way of your product not finding the correct fit, but also the failure of taking too much risk. So it's a matter of finding the balance between building a product that will solve a problem and also going at your own pace to measure the risk that is involved with your solution or the solution that you found to a problem. Because if you go too fast for a product, if you have a market fit and your product is solving a problem, but then you go too fast, you can get wrecked pretty badly. So I think the risk and the pressure is more the pressure of failure is more about the risk associated with the failure in this space of DeFi, because I don't think in Web2 you can find those order of magnitude in a way of losing money, or you have an insurance mechanism and because you're regulated. But in DeFi space, anyone can start a contract, associate his name and reputation to this contract, solve a problem, and then lose a lot of money. And then this can be painful and also imply a lot of legal consequences.
And I think also a definitely interesting.
Web3 is dangerous.
Sorry,
Yeah. No, go for it. Sorry, I'm done.
Yeah, I was just going to say that another advantage of the bear market is I think you have a little bit less of that pressure to execute at a speed that could increase your risk, which we've definitely seen a lot of over the last year or so. Mounir, you want the last word on failure?
I mean, yes, that's how we started. Related to the story I was telling, like the whole start of ParaSwap also came from a failure of misaligning with the target users. That helped us on build what ParaSwap looks like today. But adding to what Julian is saying, yes, move fast and break things that doesn't work at all in crypto. Maybe we can do it on a user interface, maybe in some really specific context. But yeah, you cannot break a smart contract, because that can have devastating results.
All right. Well, that is a nice note of caution to end on. I want to thank all my panelists and everybody here at MainNet. Thanks to Cronos and Crypto.com and ParaSwap and all of Julian's various projects. I guess I'll call it shout out Curve. We're all happy to be here, and I think the panelists will probably hang around for a bit if anybody wants to say hi one-on-one. So thanks everybody for coming, and that is our panel, and we'll have another one coming out in about 10 minutes.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me. Thank you to the panel.
you.
Thanks, Julian.
And, you guys, bye-bye.